Okay, after much ado of discussing whether or not we should plan this out or just go vulnerable and take it to the wind in 2025, here we are for another inquiry series with Michelle Terrill-Heath. And Michelle, we are discussing the last key talking point in your book, A Parkinson's Love Story. And, let's just dive right in. It's all about magic and wonder and awe. And
Sounds perfect.
can I just ask you really quickly, right off the bat, to set this up, like, why bring these in? Why are they so important to have magic, wonder, and awe? Before we go into the story about the palm reader, which I think is in the book and amazing, uh, why would you include these on your key talking points? Why they're so important, along with the medicine and healthcare and everything?
Thank you, Sky. So the reason magic, wonder, and awe on the short version, but we'll get into it, is so important to me in my book and in my uh, life is because those are three words that express the parts of life that can't be exactly explained, and people can't be certain about them before they happen. So when you experience magic in your life, as I have and wrote in the blog, wonder and awe, I believe that we enter a different plane or a different level of living. And what I really notice a lot in the world of caregiving and also of illness, so illness, sickness, wellness, is that these things get lost. The magic, wonder, and awe get put aside in favor of the absolutes, what we look at as absolutes, which actually we're going to talk about aren't absolutes, but we think they are. So you get a diagnosis of a disease, illness, and then you get your options. And those options include the things that have been evidence-based, science and medical, different drugs, different surgeries, depending on what type of doctor you're talking to. Could be exercises, could be acupuncture, could be a lot of different things.
There's a bit like it reminds you a bit of, like, sorry to cut you off, Michelle. I want to jump in there. Like, for people who have ever been to court before or seen court shows, which I know are super popular, it's always like the verdict is always what has been, all the evidence is given. So the judge usually, if you go to a judge, will rule on a case. You go to them because they're going to be a status quo, right?
Exactly.
You're talking about status quo, which is uh, can be challenging when you do get a disability, or if your health is compromised, because you rely on status quo to get you better.
That's right. But the thing is, magic, wonder, and awe are a very integral part of Andy's and my story. And they're a very certain part of why Andy's doing so well. The other things, the other things that I'm calling absolutes or you're calling status quo, we know what they are. They're important too. But without magic, wonder, and awe, they become flat. They become stale. I read a zillion comments on my Caregivers for Parkinson's Facebook group of people who are at their wits' end, are desperate, are sad, are hurting, are feeling losses.
Yeah.
And at that stage of dealing with an illness, to even suggest that there could be magic, wonder, or awe, or all three in somebody's life could be really a confrontational type of thing.
Yeah.
But what I've found is if you can remain open to it, that's exactly what happens in those types of circumstances.
Let me just go into the naysayers, because you're kind of bringing that up a bit, which is like, I am totally not into magic, awe, or wonder, and I believe what the doctor says. And yeah, like, you're saying that there's evidence against, and anybody who reads the book, for instance, like, is going to see this is another. It's not an either or book. It's an and book. It incorporates both magic and status quo. And I love that about you, Michelle, because you really do hold that space always in my own life personally too, is like, it's not either or, it's always an and. And I think that's awesome. So um,
Shout out to Perch.
shout out to Perch, exactly. and beyond, how do you tap into the magic? I mean, so you're dealing with all this, like, depression, and you've done that too. Um, how do you not just feel like doing this magic, wonder, and awe is like a spiritual bypass? Is what I was trying to get to. Is like, as a naysayer, I would say, hey, oming this away is not going to make me feel better. I just want to feel shitty about the fact that I am not well. Where is how do you include magic in that if you feel that way?
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way that what I would recommend and what I do is look outside for inspiration. So look outside of yourself. We always say look into ourselves, but look outside of yourself and read a bit of poetry. Understand that poetry represents, particularly poetry like Tagore or Rumi or um, just read a bit of poetry and let yourself feel those words. And if those words they will break through the barrier they break through the barrier when I put up my barriers.
Yeah.
And, or go out for a walk in nature somewhere and watch the birds, watch the trees, and see a higher level of existence that isn't caught up in things like depression or discouragement. And just allow yourself, I don't say just to diminish it, but it's not as complicated. Allow yourself to be part of that, to be part of that poem or part of that scene. Call a dear friend or relative who makes you laugh. And I call my sister often because she is one of the most funny people I've ever known in my life. Now,
Heal.
she made me laugh about her every morning waking up to clean up her poor elderly dog's diarrhea.
Yeah.
And this has got to be a horrible situation, and she can make me laugh about it, and she'll be laughing too.
I love
So
That's
you've
amazing.
got to find one of those triggers. Those are the three I usually use myself. So there's others, but those are the three that I will highly recommend because I have direct experience.
You do.
And get yourself out of yourself, and then you just sit back and wait, and you see what's going to happen. My dad was dying, and one night at midnight, he got a call saying that there was a lung available for him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like there weren't obstacles. There was a storm. The plane from Mayo Clinic that would usually come pick him up wasn't available. It was stuck in Kentucky in a storm. He had to be there within 6 hours, and it was a 6.5-hour drive.
Yeah.
So he had to find a way. I mean, that went on and on.
It's amazing because like that's what you're talking about, is that it's a faith muscle, or like believing in things unseen. So you're saying like, wait, sit back and wait, which is like, let the higher part, the emergence that is beyond your separation, work for you, which is all the things and components you can't understand, even though it's shutting down a flight and shutting down a time and shutting down a meeting, and everything in your separation looks like this is not going to work out. You're saying that somehow tapping into that and letting it do its thing is like, let magic do its magic thing, which is what is out of your control, right, in some way. And I want to say really quickly, we're going to lead right into what you're saying, because I think part of going outside of yourself is the palm reader, which is we're discussed in the book. And it's a little bit like also going to other people who are wise elders, parents. You mentioned your sister seems to be like a great place to go for humor. But oftentimes, yeah, when you are helpless in those moments of separation, I think one of the best things to do is to go and ask for like wisdom from the people who know astrology, or the people who know the faith, or people who,
Or your pastor, or your priest, or your rabbi.
shamans and the mystics and the zoo.
Yep.
And the poetry you mentioned before, I wanted to let you know, I had just been watching a beautiful, beautiful YouTube video, which I'll try to put a link in this, about the two parts of the brain and how they operate. You know, the neocortex in the middle, which some call a pineal gland as well, is the bridge between the two, and poetry activates this bridge, apparently. They just found out in neurology that when you read poetry, it activates, people used to think it was just a right brain thing because it was the most creative, right? It actually is a bridge for helping people get out of the logical and grounded and into the magical and the mystical. And water it off. So it's amazing that you said poetry, Michelle, because you didn't even know that. You just mentioned poetry as a tool that helps you in your own life. So thanks for sharing.
I was gonna say the poet I couldn't think of right then was Mary Oliver, who writes simple poetry that's so powerful.
Or like Angelou, I love as well. She was amazing. Or like, Rilke Wayne Rayner, Rilke, and like I don't know. There's so many of them you could go to that are just transformative. But it's funny because language is so powerful in that form when it's not about communicating structure, when it's about communicating magic and the in between the lines that we don't really know how to read so much. So speaking about that, can we just go dive into, because we have got a few minutes left, about the Substack, and also, you talking about
Palm reader.
why did you go to the palm reader? Do you believe in palm readers? And now if you believe in palm readers now, because if you read the book, you'll understand why, but we'll let you leave with it. So go ahead, Michelle. Why
I was only 20, and I guess the palm reader, she was a very attractive older lady who like attracted my attention because she was almost like a whirlwind around her of attention, because of her long hair and her bright clothes and her little caravan thing she lived in and worked out of. And um yeah, and so I got that reading, and of course I never forgot about it, that my 50s were going to be so amazing. And then, during my 50s were really the hardest times of Andy's Parkinson's care, the absolute hardest, worst, most hopeless feeling, biggest losses. Yeah, just really hard. And so, of course, I have that kind of memory. So I'd remember and go, wow, all these decades of my life, 20s, 30s, 40s, I was thinking 50s would be amazing. So all the harder things that happened before, I'd go, oh, no problem. I'll just get to my 50s now. Everything's going to be amazing.
oh,
And here I am in my 50s,
in the heart?
suffering like I've never suffered before, and watching my love of my life suffer like he's never suffered before, and not being able to do anything about it, and just kind of going, well, screw you, palm reader. That's just crazy.
Well,
So,
screw you, magic and wonder and awe. I mean, that's about because if you're holding on for 30 years, like, hey, I finally arrived at my golden age, and it's like,
right.
nope, it's actually an apocalypse. So,
So, learn from me and don't hold on to things for 30 years that you're, but do remain open, because what ended up happening, and of course, this is the story of my book and the story of my Substack, my recent one, is really how things came full circle because of this lovely young woman, Yansis, who's a Ladakhi woman from India, who was just a young girl when we met at the orphanage in outside of Dehradun, where we worked, where Andy built the bridge when he had Parkinson's, where Alana and I taught classes of these young children. And now, of course, that was in 2007, 8, 9, 10. Now, this little 8-year-old girl is 25, and she's contacting me on social media. And what's amazing is we were the first ones to show them how to be on Facebook in order to contact us. And we were the first ones to take them to town. They were never allowed into town. So we'd take little field trips and take them into the little town, which wasn't even a town. It was a dirt road, little village. But we'd go to the sweet shop and get something to eat. And we would go into the stationers and the different shops and and we'd take the tuk-tuks and we would show them a different world that was their world, but they hadn't been exposed to. They lived on this little farm place. So
and the fact that she
reached out to
contacted
me.
you is magical. The fact that she reached out and read your book, and
That's it. I
that's
mean,
very
to know this little girl and to be like, wow. And and so I told her about the way to listen to my book, with me reading it that we've recorded on YouTube. And I told her all the chapters are there, and you don't have to buy it at all. You can just listen to it if that works for you. Or I don't know how you can buy it in India, actually.
yeah.
So
Well, for the listeners, anybody who's listening to this now, you can listen to everything for free. Michelle wants this information to be out there. It'd be great if you bought the book, because that helps support, Michelle and her work. But it's it's an offering for the world for sure.
the offering for the world. And so then this young girl, who actually I had a hand in teaching to read and write English, wrote me the most beautiful letter, and I put about a third to a half of it in my Substack. And just to me, that was the awe. in a sense that, wow, for me, 2007, I remember it vividly. Um, it's what is that, 17 years ago?
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
and Andy was really sick. He was shaking, but we went to India anyway. He ended up, that's all in my book, so I won't go over that. But we meet these little kids, and to think that 17 years later, they're not only still in touch with us, but reading my book,
Yeah.
listening to my book, and then absolutely able to write a beautiful testimonial, understand it in English, which is
Let me cover some of for the
beautiful.
listeners too, Michelle, really quickly, just like what you will get from the Substack if you haven't read it yet and you want to go back and read it. It's the emotional impact of the book, the deeper understanding of the journey. She mentions a tribute to resilience that, both the whole family, Andy's quiet brilliance, which you will find in the book for sure, a journey of freedom and safety, the love and gratitude that's present, and future aspirations. Those are all things, the testimony that came from her. And I want to say, you sort of already answered the question I want to lead this off with, possible to tie this off with, which is, out of all of this, you guys were able to give so much service in a time when things were so uncertain. So that is kind of, I think, part of magic is being able to continue to like give even, what you can, when you can, what you guys did. And then you affected all these lives. Now you've got this amazing testimonial and, are continuing to put that out in the world. But to lead the listeners off, my question is, we already have awe, but what are your definitions of magic and wonder? Like, what would if you had to give a definition to magic or wonder, what would they be? We already know awe, because awe is standing in the, time and, you know, all that was transformed. What about magic and wonder?
I I would say, and this is just off the top of my head, I haven't really thought a lot about this. So
Okay.
and I'd love to know other people's thought. They too.
Uh,
I'd love to know what other people's definitions are, because I'm not saying this is what it is. This is what it means to me right now.
let's come up with a collaborative edition. Yeah, collaborative edition.
Magic for me right now is when something completely unexpected and almost impossible happens. Almost something that you would think is impossible, but actually happens.
Ooh, I love that.
And wonder for me right now is after. It comes for me after magic. When something almost that's been painted as impossible happens, then wonder is that feeling of understanding that it's real and that it happened and that it's part of this world.
Wow. You can't see it or measure it or substantiate it in any way except for the magic and awe that it creates and the wonder that we have. So thank you so much for sharing that with Michelle, with us. And we're
Do you want to do? Do you want to do it a definition, or do you want to just go with what I said for
I
me?
like what you said. I mean, my definition is kind of pretty much that as well. I mean, all the things I want to cover in this concept were basically like things unseen, really. There's so much that we don't see with our feel or smell or touch with our five senses, and yet there's so much a part of what moves us and what fulfills us and fills us and carries us and all the things that we talk about caregiving. And I think that being in this situation in life with people who have like a disability like Andy, you just get to see like there's just no way anyone could make it through this, and you just stand in wonder and awe of that, and then you're like, there must have been some magic. Yeah, because there's nothing we could have done physically to make this happen. So I'm doubling down on that. And listen, all the listeners, like, subscribe on Substack, subscribe on YouTube, comment. Like we said, let's come up with a common definition of magic together and wonder and awe, or share your stories. Would love to hear that as well. And
I would love that.
after the next Substack, just so everyone knows, we're doing Substack writing and then Substack video. So we're going to continue this little flow and see how you guys like it. And if you do, we'll just continue doing that same flow. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Bye for now.